Good morning, anyone who happens to tune in. I have a bunch of Dragon and Griffin pictures I'm going to be working on for my next book, so I thought I would stream those for anyone who's awake and wants to join in. I know some of you guys are in different time zones, so I'm trying to do streaming at different times of day, and we'll see if anybody plays this back or checks it out, but I'm going to be starting with a lemon and lime themed Griffin. It's a little harder for me to show pencil because I draw pretty light if I'm going to paint over it. So I'm trying to get some good lighting for anybody watching to kind of see what I do. If you guys see me messing around with the lighting, I'm trying to figure out if I want natural light or to use my light because it's harder when I'm just doing light. Because I want you guys to be able to see if you play this back, or oh, we have somebody tuning in for the stream. Well, my pencil drawings are light, but I do it all really light if I'm going to paint over it. So Good morning. I see we actually have people on the channel now. Awesome. I'm working on a lemon and lime Griffin, who will enjoy all things lemon and lime flavored in my next book. I figured I would just stream some of these little pictures that I'm working on, and I am happy to take questions. This one I'm not going to be using ink on, so in a minute you're going to see me start doing some watercolor over this sketch. So he's sitting on a big pile of lemons and limes, and there's some slices there too. It's kind of an odd thing to be creating, but it's really fun. And now I'm just moving my coffee so that it's not anywhere near my painting water will be, because that would be bad. Yes, I have coffee again. I'm very happy. So when I do not do ink and I'm just going right to watercolor, I have a pencil drawing that's not too dark, and I'm actually going to be tracing over the parts of it I want to keep, kind of making a new line drawing, and then I'll erase my pencil and I will keep painting. So since this is a lemon and lime Griffin, it's going to be all greens and yellows and maybe some golds or oranges. So I'm just outlining him in green right now. So you're just basically seeing me at work working on illustrations for books, and actually the originals of these are this size one, which is why they're kind of small. I cut the paper down. They go to some of my Patreon subscribers. I'm doing 6 this size. I have a couple of them already done. They're going to mail out a little later this week. And they're for my monthly subscribers that pay a little more to get sent weird creature paintings in the mail every month. And if anyone has questions, I am happy to answer them or just hear about how things are going for everybody. We had to venture out to the store and go grocery shopping yesterday, and I was very happy. We got everything that we needed. It was much less hassle than I thought it would be. And we were just about out of coffee, so we are very happy to have coffee this morning. And some artists, they like to do really clean pencil drawings. They actually will sometimes even use a projector or a light box to transfer from a sketch to a really like simple, very clean pencil drawing. But since I'm basically converting mine to watercolor as line art, I'm not going to worry too much about that because when I erase the pencil, it will not. It'll almost completely erase. It'll not be very obvious that I had a pencil drawing here to begin with. I hope everybody is doing good this morning. At least for me, it's morning. I'm trying to do some morning streams, some afternoon streams, and some evening streams since I know I have kind of fans and subscribers all over in different time zones. It's not very fair to just do 5 o'clock onward streams when some of you guys are 3 or 4 or 8 hours later. So trying to mix it up a little. Plus, I always have work to do. So if I can share it with you, that's awesome. I don't think you'd want to try to take the fruit from this Griffin. He looks like he might be kind of angry if you did. He's very possessive about his citrus. This is for the Beverage Beast book because he's going to actually like the juice from lemons and limes and like anything that includes those. And he's actually going to have clawed this one. Many years ago, I used to watch artists do things like this on PBS or occasionally at conventions, and I'd think, how the heck do they do that so fast? How are their hands that steady? It's just practice. I mentioned in one of my other streams that I did a little painting like this every weekend for about a year to get really comfortable with watercolor. And that was because I just got stubborn. I tried it a bunch of times. I just wasn't good at it. And even now I go back and look at those paintings and I can do so much better now. You just get a feel for how brushes move and how much paint versus water you want to pick up. And then you also just get kind of relaxed about it because you realize that it's water based, so you can kind of change things if you need to. And yeah, I think this is probably going to be either a baby one or they're just really cute, chubby little griffins in this species. Ooh, cool. We have someone who finally figured out how to do Twitch. I think you can actually watch me stream even without an account because I even embedded it in my website. But the account lets you comment and ask questions and things like that, which you guys are more than welcome to do. And I don't always know who everybody is from their screen names versus because the screen names on here are different from screen names on Kickstarter or Patreon or Facebook. So yeah, you have to follow and you have to make sure the little bell icon is turned on. For some reason, sometimes when I follow people, it's turned on, and other times it's not. So I have to make sure it's turned on so I see alerts for their streams. I'm trying to do some more serious streaming with like planned events where we do specific tutorials, and then a lot more casual stuff like this where you just get to see me painting weird stuff, like lemon and lime griffins. This guy's going to be really cute, I think, when he's done. Friend. Ah, it's my boyfriend's mom. That's awesome. I hope you guys are all coping okay with being stuck at home. I figured if I can do this to entertain people sometimes, that's cool. A banana ice cream dragon. Ooh, I so want to see some of these. I feel like a lot of people always tell me they're doing stuff that they've watched me do and they're inspired to make something, or they they get tattoos of my art and I'm like, send me photos, and I never get photos, which drives me crazy because I love seeing what people are making or doing if I got to be a part of it a little bit. So now I've almost finished kind of a basic outline in watercolor on top of my pencil drawing. I'm just working on the part down here. This is going to have all the juice from the lemons and limes kind of spilling out. And then I'm going to let this dry for probably 2 or 3 minutes, so some of it's already dry. And then I get to erase all my pencil and start working on the details. I could probably start erasing like some of this part up here because it should be pretty dry. Once I figure out where I put, there's my eraser. Okay, there we go. So now I don't have any more pencil. There might be a few traces of it, but by the time I paint over this, you won't see it. And I basically have a line drawing in watercolor. And one of the things I can do if I just have the watercolor is to kind of brighter solids. I can just use water to blend parts of it. But part of what this does is not only give me a line drawing, it creates kind of barriers that I'm going to paint inside to kind of help control where my paint's going to go. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to zoom the camera in a little bit for you guys so you can see more of his face. And I'm going to work on that area. Now I got my light back on. I was trying messing around a lot with the lights earlier because it's really hard to get it to pick up how light my pencil is because I'm going to erase my pencil. So the one thing you have to be really careful of is not to use pencil so forcefully if you're going to do a painting like this that you either can't erase it or that it actually dents the paper because then your paint won't behave right where the paper is dented. And I feel like every time I stream, I'm always adjusting my camera because the lighting outside and inside and from my light and based on what I'm painting, it all looks kind of different. So trying to get what's on the screen to look a bit like what I see for you guys. He's gonna be really cute. And again, if anybody has questions, I'm happy to answer them. Basically, I've added kind of some light colors over my original lines. You can still kind of see them, but they've blended in a little. And now I'm going to use a small brush now that this is dry and really start adding details to its face and bringing it to life. And you'll notice when I'm when I'm doing a lot of stuff with watercolor that I try to leave a lot of whites. I do add some whites back in with acrylic paint at the end or acrylic ink, but try to leave a lot of the white showing on things like the beak so I can get highlights in there. Yeah, we got 4 people watching now. Not sure if anybody was going to be up this early, though. I guess for some of you guys it isn't that early, or it's really early, depending on where you are. I'm using a lot of yellow, gold, greens, and then some blue as well to kind of build the colors on his face. He's very starey looking right now, but once I add the whites into his eyes, it will make a little more sense. There we go. Yeah, I think this guy leaves everybody alone as long as you give him plenty of sour citrus fruit, but if you take away or don't give him enough lemons and limes, he's probably going to get very cranky. Oh, Christopher asked how I'm so good at painting. It's just practice. It's like if you're doing sports or anything else, some things are a little easier to start with, but you have to just keep practicing, and the more you do something, the better you get at it. So I was not good at painting to begin with, but I did this. I've been doing this every day for years and years and years, and that just makes you better at it. So practice, 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 especially because how to hold a brush and what you're doing, it becomes more natural the longer you've been doing it. And I hope everybody's kind of hanging in there. I know a lot of us are feeling kind of trapped at home. For me, I'm here most of the time anyway, and we're still allowed to do things like take walks, get some fresh air. My house has a lot of windows, so I can leave those open while I'm painting and hear the birds and stuff like that. So that helps a lot. But I think if your job or you're used to going to school or those things, it can be a bit strange being at home so much and finding things to do. So it's a good time to start making art or writing or whatever you might be interested in. You might as well use all this time that we have to do something interesting and fun. We got a bunch of people watching now. Are you guys all in like the Arizona area? Or I think at least some of you guys are some of my subscribers from farther away, but I'm not sure. Try to remember everybody's screen names. Wow, what time is it in Scotland? I feel like that's got to be very different here, where it's 9 a.m. Wow, that is a huge time difference. Well, I'm glad I'm trying to stream at different times of day so that if some of you guys are in other time zones, you don't have to be up at like 3 in the morning to see me paint, especially for some of my younger fans. And I figure if I need to do these anyway, I might as well be sharing them with everyone. Do you normally work from home, or is that a new thing due to quarantines and so forth? I know a lot of people are saying they've had to start working from home and they either love it or they don't. For me, because I've always, well, at least for since I started doing this for a living, I've always worked from home. It's both good and bad. It is a new thing. Yeah, I feel like there's like two sides to it. There's the side where you don't have to go into a job and you can work in your pajamas if you want to, unless you're doing conference calls or things like that. But the other side of it is that you don't ever really leave work, it's always there. And you end up thinking about all the things you're not getting done. And I've had to really work pretty hard to balance the work from overdoing it or not getting anything done. I tend to overdo it. Um, Fortunately, my boyfriend's really good at getting me to actually take breaks and make us food and do fun things so I don't completely burn myself out. And I will be back in about 1 minute. I'm getting more coffee. So we have someone in the chat talking about buying a house, and I got the house that I'm painting in 2011. I looked at a lot of houses and ended up picking one that was not huge. It doesn't have a lot of maintenance, and it was about 80% of what I wanted, and everything else was about 20% what I wanted. Uh, and I actually like being a homeowner because I grew up doing a lot of maintenance on a 250-year-old house on the East Coast. So maintaining a townhouse here is not that much work. But I thought I would go crazy decorating, which I guess I did a little bit once I owned my own place. But then I also got really picky because it was my place about exactly what I put on my walls. And yeah, if you're working from home and you don't have designated workspace, it can be really hard. One of the reasons to have designated workspace, if nothing else, is that if you are self-employed and you're doing your taxes, at least here in the U.S., you get a pretty big deduction that you can take for space that is dedicated mostly or completely to your business. I have a two-bedroom townhouse, so We kind of use the room I'm in now just for our computer room, which works pretty well. And then we have a little sunroom for the cats where I have a big drawing table as well. That's awesome. But a huge thing of buying a house for me is that I lived in the same house for the first almost 20 years of my life, and then kind of spent the 10 after that moving all over the place. First with my family and then on my own. And I rented a lot of apartments, got very good at finding apartments, but a lot of the places I rented were pretty dark. I don't know, they felt a little claustrophobic. And it's one thing if you're not working from home, but if you're working from home and you paint, that's pretty rough. So a huge part of what I was looking for was something that had a lot of light, without feeling like just ridiculously grand. I like a cozy house, so it's kind of what we ended up getting. I'm pretty happy with it. And if you don't have a desk for drawing, I mean, I can actually draw with like a pad propped kind of on my knee. I'm used to drawing in weird places. I've drawn at coffee shops. Obviously, I don't need a huge amount of space to do this. But you can get drawing boards that are essentially like giant clipboards, I guess is how you would describe them for doing. People use them a lot in like figure drawing workshops and stuff like that. And I even have one, but I have a lot of fancy drawing tools from when I did a lot of like art school stuff, and a lot of them I don't use anymore. I just use some really simple stuff now. Yeah, there's a lot of tools that maybe aren't as practical once you're actually trying to use them, depending on how much space you have. So yeah, I wanted a place with a lot of light and a decent amount of space for me to work, and a decent amount of space for at the time my rather large dog and some cats. Um, and I ended up being very lucky because a couple years after I moved into this house, I discovered that in what is, in my opinion, the best coffee shop in the entirety of Tucson is um, about a 3-minute drive from here. But unfortunately, they're not even doing to go coffee anymore. They wanted to make their staff feel safe, so they've completely closed up, which is kind of breaking my heart. So we have to make coffee at home now, which is still good. But I really miss their food and their coffee and just the people there. They're all really nice. I often go paint there, just for some company. So I guess the Twitch streaming is a good alternative to that. And I see we've got 5 people watching, so if you guys have questions or just have me on the background, that's fine too. I think it's really cool that we have somebody from Scotland tuning in. And one of the things that I love, I think there's a good and a bad side to the internet. It's a tool and it can be used in marvelous ways or in terrible ways. It can be used to bully or to pick on people or spread false information, but it can also be used to share things with people all over the world and kind of expand your viewpoint and what you do and who you know. And I got kind of addicted to that after I started doing Kickstarter projects. I've done a lot of Kickstarter projects. because I started realizing if I was doing legends from Scotland or Ireland or Australia, I could actually ask people there who enjoyed my work some questions about it. And that's been like a really cool process. Um, I didn't expect to have as many fans as I do in Australia. I have a ton of fans there. It's really weird. You'd think it would be, I don't know, maybe like England or Scotland or Ireland, but nope, it goes from like Arizona, and then the next place where I have the most fans is Australia, uh, which I would love to visit sometime. It's probably not going to happen due to the expense, but there's actually a bunch of stuff I'd love to do in Australia and New Zealand. My favorite video game has started having conventions in New Zealand. So I'd love to actually go check that out. It's called Path of Exile. And one of the reasons it's my favorite game is that it has a similar business model to what I do. They actually give the game away free, and then people can donate money or subscribe to things just to get some added cosmetics. Like I have a dragon that follows me around in the game. It doesn't actually do anything, it just looks really cool. So people are really just supporting them because they like what they do. And they work very closely with their fans, just like I do. They take a lot of feedback and are constantly improving things, which makes me very happy. A lot of the huge game companies, you never see anything get fixed or improved because they don't bother. And so this is a company that's making a game where they actually love their fans and they love what they're creating, and so they're constantly bringing new and different things into the game, and I love that part. So right now all I'm doing is kind of getting my main colors on the rest of this guy so they have time to dry. And you'll see the kind of the way I work is do like one section like the wings, which are almost dry now, and then do these parts, and then I'll be able to go back and really work on the wings. I think this is gonna have to be a lemon, not a lime under him here, or it's gonna look too weird uh, color wise. And I have to add a lot of shadows to these parts, but he's coming along. Figured it'd be cool for you guys to see me do something other than a dragon, though I will be doing more dragons. I have a bunch of dragons to work on. I think the picture I'm doing after this is probably going to be a dragon. And I wanted to have the cats in here this morning, but the kitten kept trying to sit in the middle of this paper before I drew anything on it, which was kind of an issue. Because today it isn't really her birthday, it's her adoption day. Last year, it's what, 9 here. Last year around 11:30 or 12, I was sitting in here painting just like this, and I kept hearing these bizarre noises from our cats who were by the front door, which I had like our door open, but we have like a big metal screen door, so that was closed, so they could enjoy the fresh air. And they're making sounds like they kind of make when they see like a bird or they're playing with a toy, and I didn't know what it was. So I went over and checked it out, and there was a little pound-and-a-half kitten standing right by our door. And she refused to leave, and pretty much I think she adopted us versus the other way around. So yeah, today is 1 year from that. So I'm gonna make a cake, though she can't have any. And mainly it's because I didn't make Danielle a birthday cake last month, and I'm enjoying baking. It's a kind of good way to cope with being at home so much and not being able to pop out to our coffee shop for things. And I haven't made a cake for a while, so I'm going to do that. But then she's going to get some special cat treats we found at Trader Joe's yesterday. So I think she'll be happy, and she'll probably get some laser pointer playtime. I've had a lot of crafts. We're talking in the chat about like space for crafts and trying lots of crafts. I mean, I have like entire boxes of clay. I love sculpting. It's just like a time and space thing, and I know storing it is. Storage was definitely something else I looked for in this house to make sure we had enough of it, and we do. It's a little trickier now that there's two of us living here, but it works pretty well. Except right now when I am shipping out books to backers and I'm drawing in hundreds of them, because there's just boxes of books sitting all around our dining room table as I work on that. Um, and for any of you waiting for books, all the paperbacks have gone out, and I'm into the hardcovers. I expect to finish shipping the first batch of hardcovers that were due to arrive in April for folks. They're going out this week. and I'm working on basically all of those. It just takes a while because I'm drawing in hundreds of books, and that's for the Kickstarter we ran early this year for my latest 300-page book, and then I have a Kickstarter going now for the newest coloring book, which I know a few folks already sneaked preview copies from me. I had a couple preview copies at the Bookman's event that I was giving away or selling, so I've got that, and I'm working on all kinds of other cool coloring stuff. So I'm always working on a bunch of projects at the same time. It's a weird thing about writers where usually you have to be writing, and since I'm also doing the pictures illustrating, this is for a book that will be out. There's actually another book before this, and then there's this one, but it takes so much work to do all of this that I have to get started on those things really early. And the one hard thing about that is like you don't know if someone's like gonna like the last book or the book that's not out yet or it's just coming out, and you've already got to be working on the next one. Especially if you're working in a series as an author, it's a little crazy. So it definitely helps to get feedback from people online and things like that. So I think this picture is a great example of a pretty quick little painting. I think total time I've been working on this from even with a blank piece of paper start this about an hour. So it's probably in total an hour and a half to a 2 hour painting. These are the quick little ones I do, and then I do some that are 8 hours. And a lot of the ones I do that I've been demoing on the channel here have ink that I do first, but I thought it would be cool to show one where I just do watercolor, and it's a softer look, and it's just about building the colors up very slowly like this. It takes time, but I think it ends up pretty cool looking, and I never entirely know how they're going to look when I start them. I have ideas, but I think it's fun to kind of see what happens. And I'm happy to see like a couple of you guys kind of coming in and out of the room and tuning in this morning. It's really fun to get to share what I do with a bunch of people because normally people just see the end result unless I'm doing like a how-to book or a tutorial. Though my Patreon subscribers get exclusive videos every month too. And I've been debating what I want my next one of those to be. The last one we did was a clockwork hummingbird, I believe, and how that was painted step by step. And I wanted to look like this guy's kind of clawed the side of this lime that he's got here. And I love playing with the idea of what creatures would hoard or be addicted to that it wouldn't necessarily be gold or silver. It might be lemons and limes. Um, I think he's pretty cute too, which wasn't necessarily my intention, but I've done a lot of fierce griffins, so I think it's nice to do some a little cuter occasionally. I don't know what needle felting is as a craft. I know like a bunch of needle point things, but I don't know what needle felting is. We're mentioning that in chat. I think I've tried a lot of different crafts. I mean, the one people always asking me why I don't do it professionally is cakes because I love making cakes, but I think it would be too stressful to do them professionally. I would stop enjoying it. So it's kind of what I do as a stress relief. Though this is also very relaxing for me. There's pieces I've done though where it's a lot more work than this because I'm not just kind of having fun with it. It's if I'm doing a book cover for a specific book, for example, commercially, and I have to figure out exactly what somebody wants and things like that. It can be, there's always parts of it that are a little trickier. I'm trying to make sure we have enough definition and shadows kind of on the different parts of this guy. I'll probably play with his expression a little bit, though. I don't know. I think he actually looks pretty cute. I kind of like that he's a little bit wide-eyed and kind of just attacking these lemons and limes. Because I was thinking if I'm doing a beverage book that a lot of the creatures would just like things that have different juices in them. Though I suppose he probably also likes Sprite, since I think that's lemon lime flavored. Yeah, we've had a couple people mention both cranberry and grape flavored things, and I've been debating what sort of creatures those would be. If it would be a dragon, or I thought this would be fun to do a griffin, not a dragon. But I'm trying to make them interesting. I think it'd be fun to do like a really weird little imp or fairy for grape flavored things. Um, and like these are paintings right now that I'm doing that are kind of bonus ones that a lot of people usually don't see until they end up in the books. But the originals all go to Patreon subscribers, and I do between 4 and 6 of these every month, depending on how many are due. So they're a little less. They're still pretty detailed, but they're not giant pictures. And then I also do between 15 and 20. Well, I guess you subtract these out, so around like 10 to 15 pieces a month that are the ones that Patreon subscribers vote on, or suggest, or have requests for. So we do all that on Patreon, and we're gonna get a post up there pretty soon to start figuring out April creatures. I was trying to figure out if I could do a picture tomorrow for April 1st that would be like an April Fool's creature, but I'm not sure what an April Fool's dragon would look like. I gotta think on that. And I think a lot of people, I mean, traditionally, they just, griffins have very solid colored feathers. But I like putting patterns in some of mine because a lot of birds do have patterns. Sometimes I use specific birds for reference. This one, I'm just sort of making it up as I go along because I've done a lot of these. I have about 3 more to do after this. I already did. I'm doing 6 total this month, and I already did a couple this size. And they're all going to go out this week, so I knock them all out in the next day or two. So I'll probably be streaming a bit. But I also have about 100 more books to draw in. I started out with about 200, so I'm getting there. That I'm working my way through. A lot of the ones went out this week. A lot of hardcovers and paperbacks went out in the last couple of days. So hopefully everyone's getting theirs. I was so looking forward to getting feedback on that book by previewing copies at Festival of Books, but that didn't get to happen. So I said this book is going to be not the next book, but the one after that, because we're about 50, 60 pages into the art that I need for a 100-page beverage book. So I have to do a couple more months of creatures to finish the book. But the book I'm doing next is kind of not really a children's book, but it's an all ages picture book about a wizard and his cat, and their sort of day-to-day life and adventures. And hopefully we'll be the first in a series if people like it enough. I would love to do a series. And actually it's not a regular cat, it's a bat cat. So he has bat wings and his name is Mortimer. And the wizard's name is Oliver, but we call him Ollie. So it's Mortimer and Ollie. And they're kind of cartoony. It's a little different than what I do for like my field guide books like this. But I am very much looking forward to seeing what people think of that. I try to do a lot of different kinds of projects just so I don't get stale in what I'm doing, but also to kind of reach a lot of different people. And I like to have something for everyone. I have so many ideas of things I would like to do. I've got a couple of game ideas, but unfortunately, games are a lot more work because they involve a lot of other people for play testing, and printing them is very expensive. But I have some ideas, and I still get people who want me to do a board game. I wish they weren't so expensive because I'd love to do that someday. So we'll see. I've mainly done card games because they're a little more affordable. We'll see if a board game ever happens. It's because printing and shipping all the pieces for a board game is a lot more work. Oh, look how cute he is. I think his wings are kind of pretty too. The hardest part is if I really, really like something I'm painting, like this guy's kind of surprised me, I'm really happy with how he's coming out, then it's like, well, I could scan a copy for the books and maybe some prints, but it's got to go in the mail. And the people who get this size pay about $30 a month. It includes kind of everything from the $5 subscription level, and so they're paying about $25 to get an original painting every month, which is pretty good. And that includes shipping. So it's a way for me to kind of pre-sell a lot of my paintings at a discount because I do a lot of these in order to fill books that are between 100 and 300 pages. And I was talking about the fact that I might want this book to have some completely bizarre um, drinks in it that are from magical things. I thought if I'm doing a book that's drinks, maybe some potions, or the tequila that I put in the book is not regular tequila. It has an actual dragon in it instead of a regular worm, and it has magical powers. So I've been debating what other sorts of magical drinks. I would love to put Pangalactic Gargle Blasters in, but unfortunately they are totally a part of the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. They're copyrighted. Not because I'd want to steal that, but because I just would love to see what like a creature that drank something like that would be called. In the book, I think they say it's like getting, if you drink one, it's like getting hit in the head with a wedge of lemon that's wrapped around a gold brick. So maybe not the most pleasant experience. So I don't know what would drink that, but we were just rewatching the old Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy TV series recently, so that's kind of been on my mind for weird things that they have that people drink. And using Twitch so far has been a really interesting experience for me. I'm actually used to people watching me paint because I paint a lot at coffee shops, or sometimes if we have a convention and it's a quiet part of the convention, I'll have a painting out that I'm working on. But then I can usually kind of obviously see who's watching me because it's in person. So it's a little weird. Online, it's a little different where I'm doing the one talking. Um, and I'm I'm kind of reading what people are saying. It's a little different than conversations I might have while I'm painting at a convention or something. And fortunately, I actually don't do that many conventions this time of year. The really major one that I was going to do is Festival of Books, and I don't do too many others because that one takes a lot out of me. Um, but a lot of people have been asking why I don't do Wild West Con, and it's usually because it's the weekend before. And it did happen. It happened. It was like the last thing that happened before stuff got canceled. So now I'm sad that I didn't do it. So I'm not sure how I would take part in it if I could deal with doing a booth 2 weekends in a row. That seems like a lot. But I might try to do something for it next year because it's a big steampunk convention we have here, and a lot of my friends are involved in it, and I always see photos and think that would be fun to do. And I think their theme for 2021 is rainbows. So it's going to be a very colorful steampunk convention next year, and I do a lot of really colorful art. So it might be fun. Are you changing the color of your name in the chat? I think it just assigns random colors, right, to begin with. I know that Griffin is way too adorable. I feel like you'd be like, oh, it's so cute, and then you'd reach over to pet it, and it would just be like, do not touch my lemons and limes, and just kind of scratch your hand. It'd be like, you think a kitten is cute, but you don't get in the way of its food. I think it's kind of that sort of situation. And he's coming along. He's getting pretty close. I've done a lot of the details kind of in this part. Um, and I'm not using a lot of reference for the lemons and limes because I did another picture for this book of an orange juice fairy, and I looked at a lot of sliced oranges for that. So it's kind of similar for this in just different colors. And I know I've painted limes before for something else. Maybe I did I did a key lime pie creature for my Dessert Dragons book that had slices, I think, of lime somewhere in there, maybe. Um, and I've been trying to figure out what creature might represent. We did a milkshake monster for the book, but I'd love to do something related to a mudslide. For those of you who don't know, it's kind of like a ridiculous milkshake um, with like booze in it. It's one of my favorite drinks. So it looks like this kind of ridiculous sort of milkshake float drink, and I would love to do something with that. I just haven't decided. I don't want to make everything a dragon, so I've been trying to figure out what sort of if I want to do like a fairy or something for that one, or possibly goblins. I think goblins that are obsessed with sort of chocolatey drinks would be pretty interesting. So I'm trying to kind of brainstorm some of those ideas, and usually I'll throw them on Patreon, and those of you who are subscribers there, I'll immediately tell me what's a good idea and what's not. And sometimes I paint stuff even if like a lot of people don't vote for it. I'll throw it in as an extra piece. Like the tequila worm had a few votes. He didn't get a lot of votes, but I feel like I had to do a tequila worm for this book, or it would be weird um, not to have one. And then the other thing I'll be doing this week is writing about a whole bunch of creatures. And a lot of my subscribers, they get previews of those pages kind of as they're in draft form, and then eventually they all end up in the finished book. And I think it's cool that we have Twitch so we can kind of show our whole process of creating. Um, have a lot of people who assume that you're just naturally able to do this and that it's not work or that we don't put a lot of time in. So become very aware of how much time it takes me to paint things since I started Twitch streaming. I usually sort of judged it by like if I had a TV show on, okay, it took 2 episodes to paint that, but I'm a lot more aware of it because we actually have a time like we've been working on this guy for an hour and 20 minutes. I want to do something with mojito. I was looking at that because I've did a peppermint fairy, and I was actually thinking there's so many drinks with mint of not just making it a mojito creature, but maybe something related to any sort of mint flavored drink. And I wasn't sure if it should be a dragon or a hydra. It's definitely been one I'm thinking on too. I mean, there's so much stuff I could do for this book. We could just keep going for a really long time, but at some point when we reach about 100, 120 pages, I'll try to cut off. I try to do some of my books a little bit shorter like that because they're a little more affordable to print, which means I don't have to charge people so much when they want to buy them. And then um, a lot of shipping involves how much something weighs. So, like the one that I'm mailing out now is super expensive to ship because 300-page books, especially in hardcover, they weigh a lot. um, so I'm hoping to kind of do this as another one of the. I kind of want to match Desert Dragons, which I think was a little over 100 pages. And I think the writing for this will kind of match in style. It'll be a little more on the nonsensical side versus the serious side. I think it does take a long time to draw stuff, and the more you do it, the faster it gets, and the more kind of comfortable and relaxed you get doing it. Um, Drawing every day certainly is something that helped me get a lot better at it in my teens, and then progressively from there. um, and it depends what you're drawing. Obviously, like I didn't use reference for a griffin. I've done tons of griffins. I've done tons of bird creatures, but there are definitely when I was working on the hybrids book because we were mixing some like the flamingo unicorn. I was looking at a lot of pictures of horses and flamingos trying to figure that weird thing out. And I don't think everybody who does art has to do it professionally. I didn't even set out to do it professionally. I wanted to do something with my writing at some point in my life. But I wasn't sure if I'd ever do anything with my art professionally. It was just a relaxation thing to begin with. And then it became a thing that I made a little money on so I could kind of cover my cost of being at a convention and traveling and attending them when I was a teenager because I grew up in a tiny town. There was nothing to do. So going to a big anime convention in LA was really cool. I'd actually fly cross country for that and just hope to make enough to kind of cover being there. And it was a way to talk to other people who liked art. And then it kind of grew from there. And Kickstarter was the big thing that made me able to kind of stop doing as many projects for like other people's games and book covers and really start doing more of my own books. And I had an idea for a book, and I thought it would be one book, and then I don't know. This is going to be, I want to say, book 18 in the Field Guide series. I don't know what happened. They just kept going. You'd think we'd run out of ideas, but I've got a whole bunch more of them, and I've got ideas for a bunch of silly books too. Um, I kind of want to do a book that's just really horrible household creatures. Um, I might even call it household horrors, and it's all creatures that just mess up things in your life, in your home, or just smell really bad. I know a lot of other people have done books like that, but I kind of just want an excuse to paint a bunch of stinky, horrible little critters. If enough people would want that. So, and I think that one might be fun to put in spells or weird things you would do to get rid of them because there are a lot of legends about weird household creatures and the things that you do so they don't take out their wrath upon you. Uh, One of my favorite ones are I think they're called I'm trying to remember the knockers. And I've put them in some of my books. It's just a lot of different ones, but there's like a fairy goblin species that likes to sneak into your house at night and then kind of raids your food and has a party and counts their gold. I don't know why they're hauling their gold around and counting it there, but that's how the legend goes. And if you wake up and see them, and try to steal their gold, they will do horrible things to you. But the way to not a boggart. A boggart is kind of the opposite of a brownie, and they are in at least one or two of my books. They're like a household helpful spirit, but these guys, they they can be deterred if you wear your clothes inside out. And one of the famous stories is this woman who woke up and saw them counting all their gold, and she very carefully and quietly turned her nightgown inside out and scared them away and took all their gold and was very rich. But when she was doing it, there was one sleeve that didn't uh, didn't get turned the right way around. And um, so that arm gets all like twisted and she can never get her arm out of that sleeve. It's a pretty scary story. But I always kind of liked those sorts of stories. And there's a bunch of different takes on boggarts and brownies. In some versions, like if you go with like the Spiderwick Chronicles children's books, they are one creature that turns back and forth, and that you can give it honey or milk or things like that, and it will go from being a scary creature back to a nice one. But in the original mythology, they're kind of sometimes separate creatures, um, and just like you'll either attract one or the other depending on your household and what you do and how you treat, even just like if you have a farm, how you treat your animals and your livestock. So if you're a nice person and you treat all your critters well and you're in need, brownies will come help you. But if you abuse your animals or your family or just are not a nice person, then the bogart will come get you. But yeah, sometimes it's one creature, though that's more of a modern idea. And in the original stories, they were two. It's just that one would leave. And there's so many different versions of those things, both because modern movies and books have different takes on them, and then through folklore and through the retelling of stories, the appearance of things will change. So I try to take all that into account if I'm using one of those myths or legends to design a creature for one of my books. Sometimes I'll say that there's several different versions of it, or that we just don't know which is the true version, and there's all these theories. And I also try to come up with reasons why creatures are certain ways, which sometimes requires a lot of research. So it's always a fun and interesting experience. If you're a fan of the Spiderwick books, the artist who did those, Tony DiCharlizzi, is actually doing a lot of, I can't remember what he calls it, something like a daily draw. He's doing a lot of streaming of himself drawing and making art on Facebook during all this. And he's a really cool guy. I got to meet him once at a convention before Spiderwick got made into a movie and got a lot more famous. Um, and he's just a really neat guy. He's definitely an inspiration of mine. Not to want to paint like him, but just to have that much sort of personality and spirit in what I was creating. Um, and he wrote Spiderwick with another lady called Holly Black, who is one of my favorite writers. And I recommend all of her books, but be aware that like Spiderwick are middle grade. They're kind of kids books, and a lot of her other books are for much older readers. But she does a lot of things where she takes one fairy tale element and puts it into our world and says, how would that work? So one of her books is very much about drug addiction, but what the teenagers in the book are addicted to is it's like a type of fairy dust. So when you get high on it, you can actually glamour objects or yourself. You can make change the appearance of things or turn, say, dirt into chocolate and things like that for a few hours. But it's very addictive. And I love the fact that she did a lot of research into real addictions and how people uh, get those and how they handle them. But then she applied it to like a fantasy thing. And I thought that was such an interesting take on it. So I love her stuff. I'm actually behind a bit on her newest series. Like I have some of the books here and I just haven't had time to read them. And I feel like if I already own the physical book, I don't also want to buy the audiobook. It seems like I'm buying the book twice. Except with series of unfortunate events where I highly recommend owning all the physical books because the artwork and the writing is really cool, but then also the audiobooks because Tim Curry reads them and they are amazing. And we still got a couple of you guys, all four of you guys watching. So yeah, if you have comments or questions about what I'm doing, I'm kind of coming on the home stretch of this guy. He's getting there. And after this, I'm going to go make a nice cake for us. I'm got some stuff for making like frosting and general cake ingredients, so I have to decide if how many flavors and what sort of fancy things I want to do. I don't think I have chocolate for chocolate cake that's the normal kind, but I have hot chocolate, and I know you can do, and it's basically the same powder, it's just mixed with sugar already. So I know you can do conversions. I've done them before, so I'm probably going to invent some sort of chocolate thing or do one layer chocolate and one layer vanilla, and then do something fun for frosting. I did try, actually tried acrylic and oil, gosh, when I was in my very early teens. And I just don't like how thick the paint is, and how expensive and kind of how you're required to. I mean, usually oil paintings are a lot bigger than what I do as well. It's very different. So my kind of choice for that sort of look is I prefer gouache, which is thinner like watercolor, but it is not transparent. And I love it, but it's pretty expensive as well. So that's why you see me do a lot more digital gouache paintings. It's one of the things I use a lot when I'm doing digital demos. We used it in the one I did on here, and I'm gonna do some more digital demos on here as well, um, because it's a little more affordable that way. Yeah, I think baking is my big relaxing thing. Most of the time, like I cook us dinner and stuff like that. I cooked a lot growing up, so I have a decent amount of experience with cooking. Not everything, but I know enough to like if there's a new recipe to like look things up and figure them out usually. Um, and then baking is really just something that I do to relax. I enjoy doing it. I usually enjoy eating whatever it is too. Um, but mainly I just enjoy the process of mixing things up and smelling them cooking, and usually listen to some music while I'm doing that. So I think a lot of creativity carries between different mediums. I use a lot of the same techniques in baking as I do in art or in writing, just for like the creativity and kind of the mental state that I get in to do it. And yeah, I do enjoy like using non-transparent colors as well. It's just watercolor is very fast for me and very cost effective, and a lot of the other things just take a lot longer for me to do. So I don't do them as often because I usually have art that we need to get done for books and things. But I do a lot of digital stuff as well, which I really enjoy, and I do a lot of combos where I'll take a pencil drawing and then do things to it digitally. So I don't like non-water soluble paints that much. I mean, I know they have water soluble oils now, and I've never tried those. But like it's kind of a huge production to get everything out, so I can't sit down and just crank out a painting in a couple hours like this. I have to do a lot more planning um, than I would with something like this, and that's the main reason I don't do it as much. Ooh, applesauce cookies. That does sound good. I've done chocolate banana breads and applesauce chocolate breads before, which I think are really good too. And I think the one good thing for me that's kind of come out of all this is it's pushed me to start doing more live streams, and I've gotten to attend a lot more things that I normally don't because I'm too busy at home working. So later today, it's also one of my awesome friend's birthdays, and I think we're doing a like a shared Netflix movie for that. And she did say bring your own cake, so that was part of what motivated me to make cake. And then there's also like a friend DJing at the same time. I don't know if I'm gonna multi-stream everything. I have two different friends DJing tonight, which is awesome. I think Fortunate at different times because I don't like to play favorites with the DJs I know because they each have their own style. Um, but yeah, it's kind of made me get to know like their stories better. I think everybody's gotten to know me a little better because I ramble like a crazy person while I'm painting on here. Um, but it's been really fun, and I think a lot of us are going to keep doing stuff like this even after we're allowed to leave the house again. Um, which I know like we're all just sort of in like a waiting holding pattern to see what happens and when kind of our cases peak and start to fall off with sickness. They finally issued like the full stay at home lockdown for Tucson, and it starts, I think, today. But we were all, at least a lot of us, were pretty much doing that anyway, where we were only leaving the house to buy groceries and stuff. And they still are like, they were very clear in the lockdown, like, this doesn't mean don't go take a walk. Like, we want you to actually go outside and enjoy fresh air. We don't want you guys to just stay in your houses all day because that's not very healthy. Just that, like, if you're out taking a walk or you go to the park, just to like not do things with big groups, not crowd people, things like that. 'Cause I think it's a little easier. I know our neighborhood, a lot of people walk their dogs, but we all stay pretty far apart, anyways, because we don't want our dogs fighting and stuff like that. So I think it hasn't been that much big a change. Restaurants are still allowed to be open here. They just can only do takeout and delivery and stuff like that. And I most of them had already switched to that on their own. I do think it's weird that like hair salons are considered an essential business. Like I really think you can manage it. I cut my own hair. I have been for a couple of years, so I don't know how much those need to stay open. And how imperative it is to have barbershops stay open and those sorts of things. Um, Nail salons, I really don't get. Like they were on a list of essential businesses, and I don't understand how that's an essential business at all. But um, but I think everybody's trying to be respectful, and a lot of companies are doing everything they can for their employees, which I think is a great way to see like what kind of company you work for because a lot of them are doing so much for their employees. They're doing bonuses. They're making sure you get paid time off if you are sick and you have to be home for the 2 weeks. Um, they're doing work from home. So I think this is really a test of kind of the character of businesses and of people. And it's not necessarily a great way to have that come up, but it certainly has shown me what sorts of people I know and who I want to have in my life and who I don't. Just for how they've sort of reacted to this, and I think a lot of the creators I know are doing really positive things. They're doing art streams like I am, where they're doing um, streams on Facebook on how to sew clothing, or they're doing music streams. So all the DJs are doing that, and I think that's creating kind of like something fun and positive to pick people up. And music is a great mood changer and stuff like that. And then there are people out there who are just really negative, and the first thing they need to do is tell you everything that's gone wrong. And we all have some of that stuff, and I don't know, I tend to keep mine to myself, and we do our best to deal with it and keep things as positive as we can, or at least to laugh about some of the weird things. Um, so so that's good. Oh, you were streaming before this? Awesome. I'm gonna have to make sure I get notified when you stream. And yeah, I was looking at the artists on Twitch, and I noticed that I mean, I do digital as well, but there's a lot more digital streams than there are people actually doing drawing or painting, and there's very few doing like fantasy creatures like this. So I'm kind of glad I can maybe bring something else to the table that the other folks aren't doing. I mean, I love digital paint too, but I was really surprised how few watercolor streams there are. So I'm trying to do a lot more of that. And I just think it's so good and healthy to be sharing these things with folks. Um, if nothing else, they also see how much work creativity takes to do these things. I mean, I love doing it, but it does take me a couple of hours to sit here and do a picture. And if I was just selling this outright, I would probably ask 50 or $60 for a little piece like this, just because it's taken me a couple of hours and those sorts of things. But Because of the subscription model I use, I can know I have 5 or 6 of these at $30 a piece pre-sold every month. It's actually really more like 20, 25 because um, I include all the perks that you get with the five and sometimes the $10 levels as well, where you get prints and all kinds of extra things. But because I can do them kind of in a batch, it's a good balance. I was streaming before this too. I was actually streaming on YouTube occasionally, and I was doing a lot of videos that they go up just for Patreon subscribers, and then about 3 months later they go to the public. Um, but I started seeing a lot more people Twitch streaming and getting requests to Twitch stream, and having used both platforms, I would say I think it is a little easier to stream on Twitch. And I think as you get more fans and followers, you actually can stream simultaneously to both. I know you at least used to be able to do that, so I'm curious. I think I have to hit 50 followers to unlock more features, and I think we're at like close to 40. So I don't know. I don't do as much of a separation. They used to ask me the same thing about publishing. Are your books traditionally published? Are they self-published? And then all that stuff started to blend together. I don't really consider myself a traditional artist versus a digital artist because I often use both, even on the same pieces. I think you can kind of just say you're an artist, and I paint with watercolor a lot and with gouache a lot, but I do both digital and traditional for those things. I do recommend digital for a lot of folks because it's a cheaper way to do art, and I think it's less intimidating. They're not using a lot of supplies. Oh, that's awesome. So Dragon Soul is saying that they wish this little Griffin was real. They could have him as a pet and name him Sprite. But don't you think I should be doing like an actual fairy for that, like a Sprite, or is that a little too silly? I mean, I can't actually use brand names of soft drinks or beers, or like I can't use Guinness and things in the book. So, for digital art, the tablet I recommend people start with is about $30. You really don't need a tablet with a display to start with. I did about gosh, well, until last year, I didn't have a tablet with a display because I didn't really like them. I talked about this a lot on my digital stream. Um, so you can eventually get those, but it's actually better for your posture to have one where you don't have a display on it because you get to sit up straight and look at the screen. But yeah, most of the tablets you need for digital art under $50, and my one with a display was about it was like 280, I want to say. And it used to be that a good tablet with a display was more expensive than a laptop. It was 2 or 3 grand, and that's really not the case anymore. And I absolutely love the one that I got, um, which is a 15-inch Huion tablet. I absolutely love them. And yeah, it does. It took me about a month back in 1998 or 1998 to 99, somewhere around there. I got my first really good tablet, and it takes a while to get used to looking down or looking at your screen while you're drawing. But I highly recommend doing it. Seriously, start out that way. The reason is there are a ton of drawing techniques that use that and real media techniques that use that, and it actually helped me be able to do those better. So, for example, if you are drawing wildlife, like real wildlife, you often are barely looking at your paper, the occasional glance, but you're mainly just trying to do, at least when you're doing your concept stuff, quick sketches and do them very quickly. And if you do contour drawings, which we did a ton of botanical illustration, you actually aren't allowed to look at your paper at all. You can only look at what you're drawing, and you're literally drawing how it feels, which is bizarre, but um, it actually really changes how you draw. Um, so yeah, it just takes a while, and hand-eye coordination is a weird thing. As someone who had issues with that and also has a lot of motion sickness problems, there are things I've had to work at. Um, but yeah, I mean, a display tablet, you're also not talking a huge amount of money. I think there's some smaller ones than the one I have. And again, mine wasn't that expensive. And I, at this point, like 5 years ago, I would have said you can only buy a Wacom tablet. That's it. They're the only brand that's any good. They're the only brand that has any pressure sensitivity. And I never had a display one because, again, they were 2 or 3 grand, or minimum probably $1,200 for a small one. And then that started to change as more and more um, like Japanese and Chinese brands came in that were actually very good. Um, that I would now say that like Huion is a brand I like better than Wacom. I think it's much more affordable, and I prefer how their tablets are set up as far as shortcuts that you can program. And I love that they come with a stand so you can put them at an angle, which is really great for if you're drawing on the computer. And the stand is metal and it has a whole bunch of different adjustments on it. Like I much prefer them um, over Wacom now. And that's just I read a lot of reviews. That was who I picked, and I have been very very happy with them. And again, you're talking a couple $100 versus thousands of dollars, so it is a more affordable option. Because sometimes the most expensive ones are not the best. So one of the things you could do too for affordability is do what I did, which is a lot of the machines and things that I use, the button makers, the cutters, things like that, are paid for, and I get them if we fund high enough on Kickstarters. So you can think about doing like fundraising to get one as well. But Anne, I do really recommend doing a non-display. Like I still use my one without a display, and I actually use my Huion where I don't look at the display sometimes and just look up at the computer screen because um, skill wise and posture wise, it's better for you. And it does take quite a while to get that hand eye coordination, but it's so worth it. It makes a huge impact if you are drawing and sketching in real life to not have to constantly glance down at your paper. Um, and it's not easy. It's definitely something that's like a learned skill that you can't learn it quickly. It just takes time. It's a really weird thing to start with. And I think for my first Wacom, it took me a couple months to be okay with it, and then to really get good at it, I mean, a long time. You really have to know with Kickstarter what your capabilities are. A lot of people think they can't do it because they'd have to do some big project and they'd never be able to finish it, or they never will raise enough money. But I actually recommend starting with like small projects. If you're an artist, you can just fund doing an art print series, maybe doing them on better paper, or just doing a limited edition series, and you may even already have the art done for it. And it's just a kind of a way to see how popular something is and raise some money. And I don't always do big ones. In fact, mine are all considered fairly small compared to what a lot of the bigger companies are doing out there. But again, that's totally up to you. I know I have talked to a lot of creators who think they have to raise like $10,000 to $20,000 or it's not worth using it. But when I do things like the coloring book project, I think right now, and it's got 8 or 9 days left, it's like 2 grand. And I probably, if I were printing the book out of pocket, I'd only spend $200. I wouldn't print that many copies, so it's a way for me to print more, but it doesn't have to do that. And yeah, I used to get art blocks a lot, but now I kind of annoyed at people who are just like I can't work because I'm blocked, because there are, just like anything else. I used to have art blocks. I used to have insomnia. These are all things I think that creative people get a lot, but there are tons of techniques to get you through them. I almost never get blocked anymore because I learned a lot of those techniques. The one thing I recommend starting with is the Artist's Way book series. Um, the woman who wrote those is absolutely amazing, and they're fascinating. They really look at how we approach art. Oh, am I planning more keys? Oh, creatures with keys? Yes, I am definitely planning more creatures with keys. I want to expand that series to have some other ones. I'd love to do like a unicorn, but I'm not sure how it would be holding the keys. So I was thinking I'd look at like some old heraldry stuff for that. But yeah, if you're somebody who gets blocked in art or writing a lot, books like The Artist's Way and those sorts of programs, they really look at kind of the psychology of why that happens to us. And The Artist's Way actually wasn't set out to be a how-to book or anything. What happened was the woman who wrote it, Julia Cameron, was writing scripts for television series. I think she wrote for stuff like the original Miami Vice. I'm trying to remember. And she reached maybe a little younger than I am now, like her early 30s. No, it is not a religious book at all. The Artist's Way is definitely not a religious book at all. So she reached her early 30s and she realized that the only way that she could successfully write was with drugs and alcohol. And it was destroying her life. She had a young child. She didn't want that to be a part of the child's life. So she went through all of the rehabs and she got clean. And then she realized she had no idea how to write without that and that she had deadlines to make. So she did something very smart. She started asking other creators that she knew, other writers, other artists, what do you do if you get blocked? And people started giving her ideas. So she started making notes. And the notes got longer and longer, and they started photocopying them because this is back before the internet by at least a couple of years. And they started mailing them to people, mailing them around, and pretty soon they were mailing them all over the world. And they started teaching workshops, and then it became a book, and then it became a best-selling book. And then she wrote a whole series of books. And I got to meet her just once, and she is one of the coolest people I've ever met. Um, I don't know if I could do a unicorn with a horn key. I was thinking more because I usually make them sort of wrapped around a key. So I really want to look at how they did. Sometimes they would do unicorns on their hind legs for like shields and things, heraldry symbols and flags. And so I really want to kind of look at what some of those poses are like the ones reared up, and then see if I can't borrow some ideas from that to figure out how to do a key in there. But yeah, the Artist Way class really made me look at some of the misconceptions I had about art and actually about my life. Um, and I actually took the whole workshop in LA, but I'd read the book before that. But yeah, it's just a bunch of techniques. Um, they have you write something every day, and if you are frustrated and you don't know what to write, it doesn't matter. You can write your ABCs for 3 pages. It's just the act of doing that, and it makes a huge difference. And for me, I know I deal with both getting blocked and with getting depressed. I have much better tools for dealing with that from books like that, and from people I've met at conventions and just experiences of this is how you deal with it. Because I know when I get blocked or depressed, it's usually a combination of my mind and body saying something's up, I need something, I need a break, I need to do something different for a little bit. Music is a huge help for me, things like that. But yeah, I learned a while ago. Some people think that if you learn techniques for creativity, if you learn techniques for how to get inspired or how to get past artist blocks, that it's not correct. It's not right because it's not this magical creative process. And the thing is, creating, especially as an artist, when you're doing painting and stuff, it's a super magical process. But you can go grab an old spell book and they're still going to have tools and techniques in them. Um, well, maybe the world is telling you you need to get the artist's way. But any of her books, her second one, which I think is called Walking This World, really encourages you to just take walks to deal with things you're having trouble figuring out. And I find walking and music both really helped me a ton. Um, but yeah, it's when you start thinking of this as like a job, and you have deadlines, you can't sit there and be blocked. So you have to come up with how to deal with those. And I used to have a lot more insecurities and get blocked a lot more when I was younger. And it's just something where I've learned some tools for it. But I don't think it takes any of the spontaneity of creating or the magic out of it to know tools you need to do art or writing or to get inspired. I think they're just ways of accessing that sort of magical creativity. And I think to say that it's not right to use those sorts of tools is a little bit silly, because they're all there for us and they're there to help us. And it was really weird. One of the first things we did when I took the Artist Way class is they had people write what they thought artists or writers or creative people were down. And some of the words that people threw out there were weird. They thought you could only create if you were really screwed up or you had a lot of pain in your life, or I mean there's a lot of sort of stereotypes that we think we don't believe, but they get in our heads when it comes to creating. But yeah, I don't know what Artist Way book would have really bad Amazon reviews, because the one I know of, I mean the famous one is by Julia Cameron and it has really good reviews. um, and again, it does sort of a workshop book. You can do the parts that you want to do, but I actually found like a lot of the psychological stuff really interesting. And I think I mentioned this in a past stream. The most important thing I feel like I have learned about creating is that we all have voices in our head that are voices of doubt that criticize us. And a lot of people will tell you to fight those voices and get angry at those voices and tell those voices off. And what happens when you do that is that part of yourself just shouts back at you louder and you end up fighting with yourself. And the whole psychological thing I learned from the Artist Way that was so fascinating is that those voices aren't bad. Those voices are there when we say, "Hey, I want to try painting something I never painted before." They're there to say, "I don't think you can do it," because they want to protect you from failure. And they're actually a very protective, healthy part of who you are as a person. So you don't need to fight them. You just have to kind of acknowledge them and say, "Hey, okay, I know you're trying to protect me. I know you're worried I might fail, but I'm going to make the conscious decision to go ahead and do this. And I appreciate your feedback." And since I learned that sort of way of mentally handling it, um, it's been a lot easier for me to get past blocks and get past doubts about projects. And then some of those sorts of voices also come from mean things people have said to us when we were children or even adults. I've certainly had people say plenty of weird, mean things to me, and I do try to listen at least a little bit to consider them. Am I doing something that's really upsetting people? Is there some basis behind what they're saying to me? But then at the same time, I also am able to kind of separate a bit of how I feel about it now, especially that I'm older, and say, maybe this is more about their creativity and their problems than it is about what I'm doing. Because art is subjective, and there's going to be people who like it and people who don't. And I've had some really weird things. I had somebody spend an hour at my booth at one of them. Maybe it was Phoenix Comic Con, back when it was Phoenix Comic Con 5 or 10 years ago. And they looked through every single print, large and small, that I had. They flipped through all my books. So they probably were browsing for a good 45 minutes. And I had a lot of other customers. I was usually pretty busy at that show. So I was waiting on them. And I always tell people if you have questions, I'm happy to help. And I give people space to browse and decide if they want anything, and sometimes they do, and sometimes they don't. But this particular guy spent all of this time looking and then felt the need to tell me that while I had very good technical painting skill, the subject matter of my art was too mundane for him to ever hang on his walls. And I guess maybe when in my teens, someone saying something like that to me would have been upsetting. But in that case, I just thought it was funny. I mean, who has the need to tell somebody that? And I said, that's fine. I mean, We all have different tastes, so not everybody's going to want to put a lemon lime Griffin on their walls. Some people might want a bowl of fruit. I'm not one to fault them for that. I just thought it was so funny that that guy felt the need to tell me that. I've had a random crazy lady at Festival of Books, I think the first year I was selling there, who got really angry at me because my dragons were not biblically accurate to the Bible. So that was a weird one. I mean, people are just crazy sometimes, and they're just strange sometimes, and especially for me, doing so many Kickstarters and having an online presence, I would say 99% of the people who I interact with, like you guys on Twitch, are all really awesome. And then there's like 1% that we either just can't communicate, or they're really picky, or they just, I don't know, seem to want to be dissatisfied about everything. And I certainly try to take into account if somebody says you don't package my book well enough, or I was disappointed in something. It doesn't happen very often, but I try to like listen to that feedback. But I'm sure that there are just some people who also just need to be upset about something because it keeps them from having to deal with whatever's really bothering them in their lives. And I just try not to take that personally and kind of move on from that. All right, I think this guy is about done. I have one more important thing to do, which is, of course, to sign it. No, but everybody has insecurities. I certainly do. I get nervous going on Twitch. I get really nervous doing panels at conventions, and I've been doing them. I've been going to conventions and vending at conventions for over 20 years, and I've certainly been doing panels for uh, 13 or 14 years. And I still get nervous, especially if they put me on a panel with somebody who's like really famous. Because I don't really see myself as anyone other than myself. I don't think about the fact that I have fans that much, or that I don't think I'm really famous, but that I have like a little bit of fame to some people. So it's weird to me when people kind of react to me that way, because we're all just people. It's just what we've chosen to do for a living. It might be acting or writing or singing or something different, but they're learned skills just like somebody who's cooking or building things. I mean, I think it's weird that like writers and artists often have like crazy fans, but then, and definitely musicians and actors, but then architects almost never do. And architects build and design, like the things that we live in, the buildings we see on a day-to-day basis. You would think that they would have fans too, but they don't. So it's just like a weird thing that's developed in our culture. And I don't think I put myself down, but I definitely try to, if kids come up to me at a convention and they're in awe, I try to get them to just see me as a person and see this as something that they could do as well. Um, and I don't think it's ever good to want to create or paint like an artist that you love. I think you want to do painting and drawing like yourself and just reach a level where you're as comfortable as they are and you're doing art that's as good, but it's still your work. It's not you trying to emulate what they're doing. Um, so I try to encourage that too. So I don't know. I hope you guys have enjoyed this and had a good time and maybe gotten some answers to questions. And I'm actually going to go get a cake baking shortly. That I just want to finish up. I think this is pretty good. I was trying to make my lemons and limes look a little more three-dimensional, but I think that's pretty good. I think you guys are seeing it. Now it's gotten a little lighter. You're seeing it a little bit brighter than, we'll zoom this guy back out. Take the brightness back down a little bit. That's about what it's like. I try to keep adjusting things, but it's hard. We have changing light circumstances here. But I think that's about it. I'm going to sign off. So if you guys have more questions, my Twitch page has links to like my Discord and my email and Patreon and all the ways you can subscribe and help. And if you want to be notified of future streams I do, please follow me on Twitch. If I get enough followers, I get to kind of add some more features and things to the streams too. So hopefully you've enjoyed this and you have a good day.